Hi everyone, Dave here, your host of Legends of the Spire. Each week I obviously talk to a load of former Chesterfield players about their careers in the sport. Last week we had Danny Wilson, which was really great to have him on. That got us to number 60, which felt like a bit of a milestone. Hopefully we can get to 100 somehow. Might take me a few years, but I'll try and get there. This week we do get over to number 61 as I spoke to Barry Roche. Now, Barry was a goalkeeper with Chesterfield in the Roy McFarland, Lee Richardson era in the mid-noughties, coming to the club after being released by Nottingham Forest. He was a young keeper finding his way in the game, but played over 100 league games for Chesterfield in his time with us. His most notable achievements obviously being that League Cup run in 2006, where he was doing goalkeeper heroics in the penalty shootout versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. That set us up with those great games against Man City and West Ham. Obviously those goals from people like Derek Niven and Caleb Foden will live long in the memory. But Barry played his role in those games too, putting in some good performances against some legendary strikers. Now, at the end of his Chesterfield career, he suffered a bit of a drop in form. That's his words, not mine, which resulted in his relationship with the fans turning a little bit sour. He infamously gave them the finger during one match after getting a bit of abuse from the terraces. So he spoke about that and how it really helped his career, actually, from when he moved on to Morecambe and then had that long career with them. He then obviously featured in net against us quite a few times in Morecambe, especially in that infamous 4-3 defeat over in Morecambe, where we were 3-0 up at half time. And I actually spoke to him on the 9th anniversary of that game, so we obviously had to give it a bit of a mention. And yeah, it was great to have him on. He's still now at Morecambe as their goalkeeping coach, so we wish him all the best for the future, and hopefully we're playing Morecambe again sometime in the league. I never thought I'd say that. But here we are with another episode of Legends of the Spire. Please do like, share, subscribe, whatever it is, on whatever platform you're listening on. It does help me get up the charts and in the analytics of various different websites and things, so it does really help. And if you do have any comments, do get in touch with me on social media. I'm just at Spire Legends at the usual places on social media, or legendsofthespire@outlook.com if you live next to a Spireite, or you can point me in the direction of any future interviewees. But here we are with episode number 61. He's got no hair, but we don't care. It's Barry Roche. So explain the shirts behind you. Are they?
There's I'll show you that. There's my testimonial shirt.
Mm-hmm.
That's Scott Carson's from the cup run, the Chesterfield Cup run.
Yeah.
For them. Charlton.
Mm-hmm.
And then we played Chelsea a couple of years ago in the FA Cup, so I managed to get a Kepa shirt as well.
Nice. Excellent. Good to see a Chesterfield linked one on there.
It's probably, I think it's the only shirt I ever swapped when I was playing. I always felt too embarrassed to ask for the shirt, so I never did it. We played against Rob Green and some good goalkeepers, but I never wanted. I always felt a bit stupid asking for the shirts, which I regret now.
So it's interesting because I've had a few players on the podcast that have ended up coming from Ireland and then ended up at Chesterfield, and even we had Sean O'Neill, who came over, who was from Belfast, but came over from Belfast to play for Leeds in the 1960s and then ended up at Chesterfield. So you've kind of had a trip, haven't you, kind of over the water? And was it Leeds that you came to when you came over?
My first trial was at Leeds, and I think I was like 13, 14, and I was they'd offered me a contract scholarship for when I was 16. But the manager at Leeds at the time, the youth team, was Paul Hart. He moved to Forest, asked me to come with him, and I did. So I went to Forest instead. Obviously, Paul was after that, he was such a big influence on my career, but he was, the main reason I was signing for Leeds. So when he asked me to go to Forest with him, I went over and had a look, and I thought, this is the place for me.
Another former Chesterfield link as well. Paul Hart managed Chesterfield.
Yeah. Fantastic man, unbelievable coach, manager. He played a massive role in my early career.
Yeah, because it's a big thing to do, isn't it? Kind of move move away from home into a.
It is, but at the time, I remember at the time it didn't seem like a big thing at all because this is what I want to do. It's what I wanted to do for such a long time.
Mm.
That as soon as I was given the opportunity, there wasn't even a thinking process. It was like, right, I'm going, and it was made easier at Forest because we had, we were all in, all the lads who moved, from obviously Ireland and different parts of the country to Nottingham. We were all in the same house, but there was about 12, 13 Irish lads, so it effectively was a home away from home.
Yeah,
and made the settling in process a lot easier.
So were you always was football always your sport, or was there
Yeah,
any others?
I played Gaelic football back home, and that's a game that obviously I loved. But from 7 years old, it was like, right, it was football and football only.
Mm. And were you always a goalkeeper? Did you ever dabble anywhere else on the pitch?
But yeah, it was one of them. Who's the biggest? Yeah, throw him in goal, and then I never got back out.
And I suppose, do you have the good mentality to go in goal? Because you have to throw yourself at stuff, don't you? You can't be.
My old man was a goalkeeper in the League of Ireland, so I watched him, as a young boy, and then it was just something that I loved. Like you said, you have to have a certain mentality to playing goals. You're constantly throwing yourself around, throwing yourself in the way of the ball. But for me, it was just something that I always felt just came quite natural, and it was something that I loved even from an early age.
I remember Bob Wilson talking about how he kind of, if there was someone's boot there, he would quite happily throw his face in the way of the boot. He said it was kind of a natural thing for him that he didn't have.
It is though, to
It.
play in goal, you have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to do that without hesitation. So I look on the training ground now, and I look at the centre halves, and they're heading balls 40 yards, and automatically I think, oh, I'd hate to have to head the ball like that. But then I think, well, hold on a second. As a goalkeeper, you throw yourself in the way of the ball if someone's blasting it 3 or 4 yards, and you do it without hesitation. It's part of the job.
Yeah, I suppose it is, isn't it? So yeah, your early days at Forest then. So this is like early noughties then, isn't it? Is this like
I moved to
one,
I moved to Forest 98.
98? Yeah. So what were those days at Forest then like? Because you were
Oh,
there.
it was incredible. I don't think until after you leave a club like Forest, you realise how good you had it. It was incredible. From the way we were looked after in the digs off the pitch, the way you were looked after at the club, the football upbringing you were given, but also, and this is why I go back to Paul Hart. He helped make us men, and he prepared us really, in my opinion, really, really well for how difficult and hard football can be.
Mm. Yeah, totally. And you had some good goalkeepers that you were with, weren't you, at that time? It's like Darren Ward and Paul Gerrard and people like
Yeah,
that.
well, when I was a scholar, I was the two first team goalkeepers with Dave Besson and Mark Crosley, and
Oh
they were
wow.
they were brilliant with me. I cleaned their boots. I did. Each player was given two first team players kit, boots, etc. to look after, and obviously it was the natural thing for goalkeeper to goalkeeper. So I obviously looked up to them, learned from them. My first year in the first team, when I made to the first team squad at 18, it was under Dave Besant, and he was incredible for me. Because he was a goalkeeper of a similar stature in terms of he was 6'4". I sort of tried to, as a kid especially, you do. I tried to watch what he did in training and implicate and sort of do it myself.
Mm.
And then there was Mark Crosley, like you said, Darren Ward, who fantastic goalkeeper, different goalkeeper than Dave Besant, but a fantastic goalkeeper. I worked with Darren for 2-3 years, then Paul Gerrard, and I think that was it before I left.
Yeah. And you did kind of make, was it about a dozen appearances, something like that?
Yeah, I made 12 appearances, but and hindsight's a great thing. I didn't, in my opinion, I didn't work hard enough that when the chance was there for me to make the most of it. And I know that now. At the time, you don't see it, or I didn't see it. But looking back now, that each time I went in, I wasn't ready because I wasn't at that stage working hard enough, off the pitch. Eating right. I'm not saying I was, I had a particularly bad diet, but there's a lot more I could have done to make myself prepared for when the chances came.
I suppose, is that all kind of things that you take into your coaching now then when you're working with people in kind of giving them a bit of advice and things like that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got a really good group of 3 goalkeepers at the club now. On sort of different stages of their career, but they're an easy group to work with, because all they want to do is work hard and they push each other. But I'd like to think, and I'm always there to listen, to give advice. I've been in the game a long time. I've seen most situations that occur on the pitch. So when I can give advice, then they tend to come and ask for it, which is good.
And it's a funny position, isn't it? Because you can only ever play one goalkeeper. You can play 2 strikers, you can play a couple of midfielders.
It is, but
only one person can ever play.
Not 9 times out of 10, you'll always see the 2 goalkeepers are really good friends, which is unusual because they know there's only one of them going to play at the end of the day, but they push each other. And certainly, the goalkeepers I've worked with at this club, they push each other to be better. They back the other goalkeeper. I know the number 2 will always want to play and he'll always want to take his chance, but they push each other to be better goalkeepers, and that's always tended to be the case.
Yeah, and you'd had a few good strikers that you'd have been in training against, I suppose, when you were at Forest. You'll have been there when a couple of years when Jack Lester was there, won't you?
Yeah. I was there with Jack. Jack was a good friend of mine, obviously doing really well at Sheffield United now. But Jack was brilliant. He was a joy to watch at times. And obviously when he went to Chesterfield, like you said in the message you sent me, breaking all the records, he was fantastic. He had everything, and he had for me that that nasty, which you'll know and watch him. Yeah. He had that nasty streak in him, which I think all good players need.
Is it absolutely? It's that type of play that you want playing for you and not against you, isn't it? I think I actually remember him playing for Forest at Chesterfield a few years before he signed, and I think he like elbowed someone right in front of us. And I remember being apoplectic with rage, and then a few years later, we were all loving him.
Jack would throw an elbow from time to time, wouldn't he? But he just wanted to win. He was a winner, and if it meant knocking someone to the floor to get the ball and sticking them in the back of the net, then he was going to do it, which for me is dead right.
Yeah, too right. Love Jack Lester. Did you have anything to do with him signing then?
Yeah, because obviously he was leaving Forest, wasn't he? And I'm trying to think, was it Rico was the manager then?
Yeah, Rico. So it would have been 2000.
Rico had mentioned it to me, and obviously knew I was close with Jack, and he said, "Listen, just get onto him. Do you think he'd be interested?" So obviously I spoke to him, and Jack is based in Notts, so location-wise was ideal. It was great for me because it was another car school member, myself and Gregor Robertson. And I sort of hounded him really and said, "Listen, come up and play for us." And then he spoke to Rico, and then they obviously got the deal. I think they got the deal done quite quickly as well. But for Chesterfield, it was an unbelievable signing.
You should have got a signing on fee for that.
Sorry?
You should have got a signing on fee for that.
Funnily enough, I did mention it, but I never saw any.
Lester. Oh, Jack Lester, good running by Jack Lester! Oh, what a goal from Jack Lester! Number 25 this season. And what a class goal that was. He took the ball from the throw-in from Hartley. He took the ball, he turned the defender, he skipped past another one, found the space and curled it around the keeper.
So when it came to signing for Chesterfield then, how did that all come about?
I got released from Forest at 23, and I ended up, I had nothing on the table. I'm thinking, I was starting to panic. I'd gone back to Ireland, started playing Gaelic football again just to keep me fit, and I got till, I think, sort of a week before pre-season, and I had nothing. So I remember ringing Ian McParland, because he was my reserve manager at Forest. And I said, "Listen, is there anything you can do? Do you know anybody?" And he says, "Right, I think Chesterfield need a goalkeeper." So I said, "Well, brilliant." So he spoke to Roy Mack and said, "Come in for a trial." And I remember I turned up because obviously Muggs was injured. Mm-hmm. And there was me and Scott Shearer both turned up on the same day on trial. And so I spent 2 weeks there, played a couple of games, and then they called me in and offered me a 2-year deal, which for me was brilliant, but it was just such a relief.
Yeah, I remember Tommy Lee talking about when he was on trial at Chesterfield, saying that there was a couple of times when he nearly kind of had howlers in in friendlies, and it could have history could have been so different had you have.
That's the thing. It is because when you're on trial, you might only get one chance to impress. And you might have one mistake in a game in a friendly, and they're like, okay, do you know what? We'll bring someone else in. Thankfully, I can't remember who we played against. I think Matlock was maybe my first one. But I trained well. The friendlies went okay, and obviously they offered me a deal.
It was bonkers friendlies that summer because we had like Matlock and I think maybe Scarborough as well. I think, and then we had that friendly against Malaga.
That was a strange one. Yeah, that was brilliant though.
It was great fun playing Malaga. We've been waiting for years to have one like that.
I'd completely forgotten about that until you said it in the questions yesterday. I was like, Malaga went. I think we got beat 2-1.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and I think you played about 60 minutes, something like that. I think maybe Muggleton had like half an hour or something like that.
Yeah, but for a club, in League One, then to be playing a Spanish top division side, it was brilliant. But I'm not sure we touched much of the ball for large parts of the game, but it was a great experience.
Oh yeah, it was a great occasion for the fans. The fans loved it, and it must have been weird for those Malaga players to be going to Saltergate. It must have been an odd experience.
I guess it's a bit different than what they were used to.
How did you find Saltergate? It was obviously a ground that we all completely loved. Had a lot of kind of just had an air about it, didn't it, of a ground?
I really enjoyed playing there because you always felt that not a lot of opposition teams and players enjoyed coming there because it was there was the away changing rooms were small. It was a difficult ground to play, but especially sort of not matches under the lights there. The atmosphere could be absolutely brilliant. I always really enjoyed playing there.
Yeah, and like Nottingham Forest famously when we played them in the FA Cup. When we got to the semi-final, they didn't go into the changing rooms. They went straight from the bus to the pitch and from the pitch to the bus because they didn't want to change.
That's a bit too much, and obviously it didn't work for them, did it?
No. It was a lovely ground, wasn't it? But the changing rooms and things like that left something to be desired, didn't it?
But they did. There's one game I can't remember who we played. It was middle of winter, and I mean it was freezing. So we've gone in before the game. Obviously into the dressing room. There's no heating. I'm thinking, oh, it's cold. So we've gone in at half time. The lights had gone too, so there's no heating and lights. Gone back in after the game, and I mean we were absolutely freezing. Showers had gone as well, but obviously I think we won the game. But it was absolutely freezing. But obviously I was there as an away player as well. It's difficult for an away team. There are certain grounds like that. When I moved to Morecambe, Christie Park. No away team liked going there, and we always felt that we were almost 1-0 up before a ball had even been kicked. And I think sometimes at Saltergate, especially when you play the bigger teams, that was the case.
Yeah, and a few players have spoken as well about how because of the wooden stands, you kind of hear the stadium filling up as you were kind of coming in from doing the warm up and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a great ground. And I've just started a fanzine called Linda's Sandwich Shop. Based on the epic sandwich shop at the end of the road.
Oh, Linda, yeah, Linda's sandwich. Yeah, we were there every day.
Yeah, did you have a favourite filling? What did you usually go for?
You're testing me now. Ham, cheese, and coleslaw.
All right, I've not had that one before.
Do you know? Funny enough, every time I went and asked for it, they were like, "What, you want coleslaw and cheese?" And I'm like, yeah, either that or a jacket potato.
Okay, standard, yeah.
But it was great. We always had a good bit of banter down there, and obviously would have been just such a short walk from the ground. It was ideal.
Yeah, and obviously that ground's all just it's just a housing estate now, but the sandwich shop is still there. Although it's now owned by a Chesterfield fan and former season ticket holder, so it's kind of still there, still selling sandwiches. I think Chinese chicken is the one that seems to come up quite a lot from a few players around your time. Kind of Alex Bailey and Phil Pickin and people like that used to like Chinese chicken.
Fair. I think though at times, because there was so many of us going down there at once, and it was always so busy. Sometimes you were like, right, you can sort of take what you can get because the filling started to run out quite quickly. But no, it was brilliant, and we always enjoyed going there and having a chat with Linda and just having a bit of banter as well.
What was Roy Mack like? Because obviously he's a great character.
I really enjoyed working for Roy Mack. Obviously, he's the one who gave me my chance. He's the one who sort of really gave me my chance to make a career for myself, and start playing football regularly. But I thought Roy Mack was obviously the gentleman, but he was a really good man manager. And I remember once I was in, I think it was in the first season there. I was playing, I was doing okay. And we were playing Rotherham away at Millmore, and he's named the team in the dressing room, and I wasn't in it. And sort of straight away you're thinking, hold on a second, you've not said that to me. You've not let me know I'm not playing. And he pulled me in. I think he left me out for 4 or 5 games. And, you're thinking, I should be back in the team. You want to be playing. And then he pulled me in the Friday before he put me back in. And he said, listen, I just felt you needed a rest. He says, but he goes, and this is a story I tell, and I tell a lot of players now, because players don't like being left out, and it's important you react well. He said, listen, I felt you needed a rest, taken out of the firing line. He says, but the first thing I looked for on the Monday after you'd been dropped was your attitude in training. But my attitude was, I'm going to prove you wrong, get back in the team, which a lot of players don't do. They might throw their toys out of the pram. But I just felt, at the time, I was like, no, I shouldn't have been out of the team. But then I've gone back in the team, started playing well again. I thought, you know what? He knows his players. He knew he was dead right to do what he did. And that's little touches like that on a personal level as a man manager, I thought he was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that season when you joined, so this is the 2005-06 season, we started really well. And we were like 4th in the league, I think, in November or something like that. And it was like defying all expectations. And it was a really exciting, fun, like 4-4-2, like in like the very traditional way. And there's obviously some great players. I mean, in your defence, you had Shane Nicholson was back, Steve Blatherwick, and Bill Pick and Alan O'Hare, Ruben Hazel. It was a really good squad of players, wasn't it?
It was a really good squad of players. Obviously the talent was there, but what was evident for me was the work ethic in them. There was a nice mix of youth and experience, but every single player worked their socks off. Everyone knew their role in the team, and which I think has gone out of the game now. You were held accountable. That if you weren't doing the business, if you were making mistakes, you're held accountable. And I don't think that happens as much in the game now. But and characters in the dressing room as well. They're a great set of lads. Obviously, Shinner, Blathers, Big Chief, Paul Hall. They were really, really good set of lads.
Yeah, and you could tell. I think you could tell as a fan around that time that the team spirit was really good, because it just seemed like
it was because I think Roy Mack had brought in. Obviously, he brought in talented players, but he brought in good people as well. And I think that again, that's another thing he did. He was always going to check before he signed someone what kind of person he was bringing in, not just what kind of player. And I think that's really, really important. Yeah, because you can have all the talent in the world, but if you're an absolute idiot in the changing room, it isn't going to end well.
I bet you've had a mixture of people in your changing rooms over the years.
I have, but I count myself fortunate that I don't really think I've ever been in a bad changing room. There's been the odd player that you don't particularly like or get on with, but I've been really fortunate that I think I've always been in a pretty decent changing room.
Yeah, and we started off that season well. I think it was Brentford. I think we started off with. I remember Alex Bailey talking about that season because he was friends with half the Brentford squad, I think, and he was saying that it was like a surprise, but not a surprise that you started off really well. So as you coming in as like a first choice for the first time, what was it like for you in terms of just finding your feet as a, you're the guy?
It was completely different for me because obviously I'd played, like you said, 10, 12 games for Forest, but I'd never had an extended run in the team. I'd never had someone go, right, you're number one, go and play. And I absolutely loved it. The difference, just playing every week, playing in front of, as I said, I only made 10, 12 appearances in 6, 7 years, but playing every week and how important each and every point was, it was brilliant, and it was brilliant for me.
As a goalkeeper, does it make a lot of difference when you have that security of knowing that you're a number one, especially if you're quite young as well at the same time?
Absolutely. If you've got someone who puts their trust in you, for me, it can get an extra 5-10% out of your performance. Absolutely. And for me, it meant an awful lot. Roy Max said, listen, you're number one. I remember, I think I'd made a mistake. I don't know who was on. I made a mistake on a Saturday, and we had a cup game midweek that Mugs played in that game. And I thought, am I going to be left out? I think they won the cup game. But he pulled me on the Friday and says, listen, forget about the mistake last week. You are my number one. Go and play. And it was brilliant.
Yeah, because I think we forget at the time, you were probably only, 22, 23, something like that?
23, yeah.
Yeah, so it's young to be.
That's why I said I have a lot to be thankful to Roy for, because he took a chance on me. And you don't find that many people will put their faith in a young goalkeeper.
Yeah, and you had a penalty save in like one of your first few games. I think it was at Yeovil. I think you saved a penalty about 6 games in, something like that. I've got to say I didn't remember it before I did the research. So
I didn't remember it when you mentioned it yesterday, and I looked it up and I couldn't find it. But now you said it, I gave the penalty away as well.
Oh right, okay. So you really want to make up for it then?
And that's only just come to me now. I've come for a bouncing ball in the box and gone to punch it, and I think I've more or less taken the player's head off instead of the ball. I've come too late, but it's one of them. You think, oh no, we were winning. You've given it away. You have to save this now.
Yeah. Did you have a kind of a tactic in terms of saving penalties? Because obviously you were from your Forest days, you were with a couple of keepers that like Mark Crosley that knew how to save penalties.
I just always felt that because of my size, I thought, right, if you go the right way, if I go the right way, it's going to have to be one hell of a penalty to beat me. Certainly the older I got, and the more analysis work came into the game, you could study penalty takers, on the different websites, watch all the penalty takers were. Back then, there was none of that available. So, you might have someone go, listen, he went left last time, you might change it. But just a lot of it, I went off run up, and I always like to give them a little bit in the rear before the penalty, just try and put them off. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I ended up having a pretty decent penalty record, I think, over the years.
I think you saved quite a few for us, I think, both in shootouts and just in regular games. I think there's a few when I was looking yesterday that you saved over that time. And there's just a couple more things from that first season, because it's a season we don't talk about that much. I think because the second half tailored off a bit. It's fair to say, but there was a 0-0 away at Forest, which I saw, which must have been nice for you, keeping a clean sheet at Forest.
Yeah, it was, because obviously it was the first time I'd been back. I remember the game as well. Sammy Klingham was playing for us. I remember that. It was, for me, going back there was obviously very special because that's where I started. But there was a lot more nerves involved because you're going back to your old club where things didn't go particularly well at times. So to go back there and keep a clean sheet was really, really satisfying.
Yeah, definitely. And it just reminded me, some of the midfielders
they just come down as well, haven't they?
I think they had, yeah, because I think we lost to them at home. I think it was like 3-1 at home or something like that. Yeah. But got the point away. But you just, the midfielders, we had like Sammy Klingham and Jamie O'Hara kind of around.
There was some really talented players coming through those doors. Really talented players, yeah.
You have to pull
Jamie, I think it was his first loan from Spurs. Some really good footballers in there.
One thing, the last thing on that 5-6 season, the one thing probably we remember more than a lot is the performance of Darren Deadman, the referee. There was a game where we lost 4-3 to Southend, and I think Janos Kovacs got sent off for the ball hitting him like plumb in the middle of the chest on the goal line, and he got.
That was at home, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I remember
that might have been actually the game before he took you out for a few games, maybe, because we just remember it. Darren Dedman wearing kind of. I think there was a rumor at the time that he was wearing pumps instead of studs, and I remember Janos Kovac taking his shirt off and showing the referee this
and there was a big ball mark on his chest. I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, there must have been times when you've had referees that you remember over the years.
Yeah. I suppose I can say what I want now. I'm not a player anymore. Yeah, listen, I always sort of rein myself back in from being too critical of referees, because at the end of the day, they're only human. They've got a split second, to make the decision. Inevitably they're going to get some wrong. But my issue was you come up against referees who wouldn't speak to you, who would just walk away from you, wouldn't talk to you, wouldn't explain the decisions. And I get that they won't speak to players who are verbally abusing them, stuff like that. But I always try to speak to them normally, and the ones that would just walk away and not explain, that's when you find a lot of players now, not now, always have an issue with. If the ref explains his decision to you, even if you don't agree with it, he'd say, listen, this is why I gave it. Even if you don't agree with it, then you find a lot of players will appreciate that a lot more. And, there are some great refs out there. There are some poor ones, as we've seen over the years. But like I said, they've got a really, really difficult job. But it's the fourth official I feel sorry for.
Yeah.
he just gets shouted and abused by both benches every minute of every game. But like I said, the refs they've got a really difficult job.
Yeah, certainly with Paul Cook at the moment. I mean, he gives the fourth officials quite a lot of purpose.
Yeah, I know what Cookie's like.
Corner kick for the Spireites. Southend have got some defending to do, and they haven't done that defending. Colin Larkin on the line has turned it in. The Irishman needed no second invitation. Lahaven. Long kick from him, putting the Blues away. An opportunity for Gower, pulls it back. Guttridge misses it. There's Freddie Eastwood. Eastwood shot blocked. Appeals for handball, and it's given. Penalty kick for Southend. Janos Kovac is the man in trouble, and the 20-year-old Hungarian has given away the penalty kick. And he's given away more, he's been sent off. A red card for the defender early in this second half. They've given Southend a man advantage and the opportunity to get back on terms. Well, the youngster being commiserated. Eastwood looking for number 14 of the season, up against Barry Roche. Eastwood scores! It's 1-1 after a handball inside the box. Southend back on terms, and with 11 men still on the pitch.
So the 06-07 season, this is obviously famous for the cup run, because it was amazing, that cup run. And we kind of have it all to thank for you in many ways, because it was the first game was against Wolves, and that's when we had the penalty shootout, or the first penalty shootout, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was. I managed to save, I think, their fifth penalty, which obviously took it into sudden death, and then they blazed it over the bar. But the game itself, they were championship at the time, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The game itself, really good game. We were, it was a 50-50 game. But I always felt entering any penalty shootout, I'm going to save at least one. And thankfully, I got lucky and went the right way for the last one. But I was always very, very confident going into a shootout that I'd be able to make a save. I think every goalkeeper should be, but like I said, I always thought if I go the right way, I'm going to save it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel, as a goalkeeper, do you feel the pressure in a penalty shootout? Because
no,
it's kind of not expected for you to save it.
You're in a no-lose situation. I'd often find myself sort of, say 5 minutes to go in extra time, thinking, right, just blow it up now, let's go. I used to get really, really excited about penalty shootouts because I'd always back myself to save them. And like you said, if you didn't, no one's going to question you. If you do, then you can be the hero.
Yeah, and obviously we got our rewards from that Wolves game, because then we had Man City and then West Ham and then Charlton. You were up against some good strikers, weren't you, in that cup run?
No, yeah, I just do. There was Teddy Sheringham, Bobby Zamora, Hasselbank. But that cup run was incredible. And I was only thinking about this afternoon coming on, like, for any League One, League Two side now going in a cup run, automatically you want big team away from home because you want to go and play at the big stadiums. But at that time, we wanted every game at home, which so we got lucky with the draw. But because we always felt that, listen, that'll give us the best advantage and the best chance to win, and it worked out that And in the West Ham and Man City games, I remember we fully deserved the wins as well. It was definitely not backs to the wall stuff at any point in any of those games, and we fully deserved the wins. But those games under the lights and the atmosphere were just absolutely incredible. I've actually got a picture on the wall there of me and Downsy after that game.
another former podcast guest, Downsy. Yeah, I mean, like you say, the wind and the rain kind of swirled around in it because it was on top of the hill, so it was like a perfect ground, wasn't it, for evening matches? I used to love those evening matches there.
It was. It was special under the lights, and there always seemed to be a much better atmosphere for evening games. And obviously, in the cup run, when you're playing against Premier League sides, you're going to have more fans in. But those nights were really, really special.
Yeah. And I even remember like Jamie Lowry coming on as a real youngster, getting his chance, I think, in those matches. And I think I remember like Dietmar Hamann and Micah Richards and people like that playing in those games. It was and it was proper Roy of the Rovers style way to win it as well, wasn't it? Those games.
Oh yeah. Who Nivo's volley against?
Yeah.
Was it City or West Ham?
Yeah, against City. Yeah, right.
Unbelievable. So obviously Caleb stuck one in the top corner as well. Chiefs last minute equaliser against Charlton in extra time, wasn't it? But then they were brilliant nights and really good memories.
Jody Craddock then versus Barry Roche, and Jody Craddock has put it over the bar, and Chesterfield have qualified for the second round for the first time in 23 years.
Well, he's done really well here to get into the box and to hang up a cross away by Rayner. Oh, what a strike! What a wonderful strike from Derek Niven! That is a fabulous goal of what is turning into a fabulous night for Chesterfield Football Club.
What was the presiding feeling after the Charlton game? Because obviously we took Charlton right to the edge as well. Was it kind of disappointment, or were you kind of pleased that?
No, we were devastated because we felt we should have won the game, and obviously, given we put out 2-3 Premier League sides before that, and that would have taken us into the quarterfinals, wouldn't it? You start thinking when you get to the quarterfinal, you just one win away from the semi-finals, and anything can happen. And to lose in a penalty shootout is horrendous. We'd won in the first round, which is brilliant on pens, but when you go out on a penalty shootout, it's really hard to take. But there was also an immense feeling of pride given how well we'd done. We'd pushed another Premier League side, all the way with nothing to separate the two teams, bar a penalty.
Which was your favourite game out of that cup run?
Probably the West Ham game, because I got caught out of position for their opener, and then automatically, straight away because I think that put them 1-0 up. You're on the, you think, right, you've got to make amends. And then I remember making a save in the last few minutes. Teddy Sheringham went through 1-on-1, and I saved that, and it just all right. You've slightly redeemed yourself a little bit, but it's hard. It would be hard to choose because there's so many special moments. When Nivo's volley went in, and Caleb was one when he's curled it in the top corner. Just the atmosphere was electric in the ground. It was incredible.
Alan O'Hare sizing up his options here. Oh, ricochet, it's surely in, it is for Poland! Suddenly he was free in front of goal. And Caleb Poland, the man they call the Raging Bull, has put his team in front with just over, 4 minutes to go.
In went Alex. Good header. Alisson! 3-3! They just will not be beaten.
And you were battling with Michael Jordan, wasn't it, over that period? And I think he signed the season after as well. He was like a young goalkeeper from Arsenal, wasn't he? At the time?
Yeah, Michael. Did he have 2 years there? I can't
think he
remember.
had like a short loan spell maybe in that Carling Cup season, and then maybe signed permanently or signed on loan that season after, I think.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. Good guy, good young goalkeeper. He was good for me as well, because there wasn't an awful lot of an age gap's only a few years between us, and we just pushed each other, like goalkeepers should be. But we worked really well in the training and wanted to help each other out, and he was a really good guy too.
Yeah, and obviously we got relegated that season. I don't think people really remember now that we got relegated that season.
I do.
To think about, but that was obviously the point when Roy Mack left. Rico took over for the latter part of that season, and it was a weird way to get relegated, because I think we beat Bradford 3-0 at home, and then we both got relegated. So
both teams got relegated. Yeah, I remember that. It was frustrating because we had more than enough in the camp to stay up that season. But it's not it's thankfully it's the only time I've been relegated as a player. But it's not a feeling that you'd want any footballer to feel. It was horrendous. Especially, like I said, when we felt we had more than enough to do, not just stay up, but do a lot better.
I guess it ruins the summer holiday, does it?
Oh, completely ruins it. Absolutely. You don't stop thinking about it. You literally don't stop thinking about it until you open the league campaign the next year. Yeah. In pre-season games, you're constantly thinking about it. You're always thinking about how you've let everybody down. Now you've not done enough, but then it took quite a while to get over.
Mm-hmm. How did you find Lee Richardson? Because it's fair to say that I've had loads of players now that have been around those squads. Peter Leven's come on, Jamie Winter has, Alan O'Hare, Aaron Downs, Paul Hall. We've had loads of players from around that time that kind of work with him, and it seems like there's a 50-50 split of some that quite liked him and some that didn't.
I can see why. Me personally, I had no problem with him. I had no problem with him until I left, and then I felt he said a couple of things that were, in my opinion, a little bit disrespectful. But at the time when I was playing for him, and obviously brought in Alan Nill as well, I enjoyed playing for him. He was a good coach. He brought in Nilly, who was an even better coach, and obviously he's gone on to do really good things. But personally, I had no problem with Rico at all. He was all, as I said, until I left, he was always very good at me.
Yeah, I remember the spell. There was a spell around maybe Christmas time, was it, when I think maybe Lee Richardson's, like, someone in his family was ill or something like that, and Alan Nill took over for a while. And I remember it was doing really, really well when Alan Nill took over for a bit, and the fans were kind of calling for Alan Nill to take over instead. But he's gone on to great things as well, hasn't he? Afterwards, a great coach.
Yeah, he's done really, really well. Like, fantastic. Honestly, one of the best guys I've ever worked with, and one of the best coaches I've worked with as well. On a daily basis, he was constantly, his training sessions were brilliant. He was constantly challenging the players, and again, just a really, really good guy.
Mm. So your last season then with Chesterfield, so this is 07-08, this was when it was like one of those seasons where we just narrowly, we came 8th, I think, or something like that, but we should have probably, I think we were like 3rd or 4th for quite a while, probably should have.
We dropped too many silly points that year. Too many silly points. And we like you said, the players we had in the squad, playoffs had to be the absolute minimum.
Is there like something you can like put your finger on what you think? Like when you're in a situation like that and you just fall short, is that one player that you're missing, or one, you know?
Yeah, I had an absolute nightmare for the last 4 months of the season. I remember the up until Christmas. For me, I was in the form of my life. I was really pleased with my performances then. But then after Christmas, my form dipped, and I made quite a few mistakes for goals that, in hindsight, you look back, cost us. Don't get me wrong, not the only one who made mistakes, but as a goalkeeper, you make a mistake 9 times out of 10 it's a goal, and I made too many in the running.
How are you like mentally with things like that? Are you quite hard on yourself?
Yeah,
with things like that.
I think you have to be, not necessarily hard on yourself, but you have to be honest. As a goalkeeper, take the clangers aside, but when you should have done better for a goal. But I was always completely honest with myself. A lot of players don't like watching the clips back, but the first thing I'd do is, as soon as I could watch the goal, you'd watch it, see what you'd done wrong, but then I'd put it to bed, and then that'd be it. Move on till next week.
Yeah, because it must be hard confidence-wise, because then you kind of have to go back you have to kind of forget it, don't you, and kind of start.
Yeah, that's why the last 3 or 4 months of the season were really, really hard for me, because I'm still a young goalkeeper, but as you, I'm sure, know, there was a portion of the Spireites fan base that didn't take too kindly to me. And it was like, even in my warm-ups before games, I was getting stick from some fans, but it really helped me, and it toughened me up a lot, because if you're getting sarcastic cheers every time you catch a ball in the warm-up, you've got to have broad shoulders.
Yeah, I was going to kind of ask you about that, because obviously you did catch a bit of flack, and in my opinion, kind of unfairly, because you played a lot of good 120 games for Chesterfield or something. Played a lot of games, but.
Yeah, well, I remember when it started, we were Rotherham away, and just before half-time, I got beaten with a free kick, and it's gone in off the post, but it's goalkeeper side, so you think, goalkeeper shouldn't be beaten on his own side, but it was by no means a howler, and we were up in the top end, and obviously you've got to walk to the dressing rooms past the away fans, so past the Chesterfield fans, and as I've walked in the gate towards the dressing rooms, like 10, 15, 20 of the fans rushed towards me, and I started absolute pelters, and I was sort of taken aback on, listen, I know I should have done better, but it's not a big mistake. And then I've come out for the second half, and I was getting dogs abuse from Chesterfield fans. Obviously not all of them, but I did something that I shouldn't have done, whereas I reacted and gave them the middle finger, and then it went downhill from then on.
It's hard though, isn't it? It's like, it's almost like, in some ways, the fans, and I mean, we've had a game last night against Dagenham when we were 3-0 down at half time, and there was this, it's fans, it's almost, some fans sometimes expect them to be able to do and say whatever they want, but then don't allow a player to have the chance to react.
That happens all the time. It's like, you'll always get we've paid our money to come in, we can say what we want. Well, hold on a second. If you're going to shout for 90 minutes, obscenities at a player, and some of the things that were said weren't, for me, of no place anywhere. But we're all humans. It's going to get to a point where you're going to want to react. Don't get me wrong. In hindsight, I know I shouldn't have reacted in the manner I did, but I was a young lad making my way in the game, and as I said, I reacted. But that's history.
It's history, yeah. That's how it goes, isn't it? And I suppose as a goalkeeper as well, you have to literally stand in front of them, don't you, for a match? Yeah. You're not like you're centre midfield and you kind of can
you think
hide in the middle of the pitch for a bit or something. You're right up there with them, aren't you?
You hear every single comment, and especially when you're getting a bit of stick, every single comment stands out a little bit more. But I firmly believe that those 4 months really, really toughened me up and really helped me for the rest of my career. Because as a goalkeeper, you make a big mistake, immediately you want the ground to swallow you up, because there's no hiding place. It's horrendous. But like I said, though it was a tough time in my career, but it really, really toughened me up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and was it because I think you had a year left on your contract, didn't you, or something like that? So, but was it quite nice then to have a fresh start?
I needed a fresh start. Yeah, I definitely needed a fresh start. It was a mutual agreement. You're free to go. Okay, right, I'll go. But I remember we played away at Morecambe, maybe March, April time, up in Christie Park. We drew 1-1. And I remember coming out afterwards, and like, Christie Park is not the nicest stadium for an away player. I remember coming out afterwards and going, "Oh, I tell you what, imagine playing there every week." 2 months later, I was up the road signing for them.
Playing for them for what? Over how many games did you play for them in the end? Something?
Just shy of 500, I think.
Wow. Is it nice to be like a legend somewhere to play that game? It must be.
I wouldn't say that, but I found my home here. I found, I loved it here. I played my best football here without a shadow of a doubt. I love the club. I'm in the area. So yeah, and obviously I'm still on the coaching staff now. But for me, this, like I said, I love this club.
Mm. And it's funny. I only realised this afternoon when someone put it, but it's the 9th anniversary today of the 4-3 Morecambe Chesterfield.
I didn't want to mention. I saw that this afternoon. I didn't want to mention that. Yeah. That that was because obviously every time I played against Chesterfield for Morecambe, there was always going to be a group of people giving me sticks. So it was that one was a very, very special one. But I always seem to play well against Chesterfield. Some good victories, but obviously that one was really special because the talent Chesterfield had in their squad at that stage. They blew us away. First half, it was like it could have been a cricket score, but we always felt that if we got one back, you get back in the game, we'll stand a chance, and it was brilliant. But funnily enough, Gary McSheffrey played in that game, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, because that happened last year, didn't it? Was it Doncaster?
Doncaster, yeah. I hadn't realised, and then he said to me afterwards, he goes, "Last 2 times I've been here, I've been 3 up at half time and lost 4-3."
I remember I was at the game then when that happened, and I remember at half time us having a conversation in the stand saying, "What do you think it'll be? 6, 7, 8?"
Yeah.
And then the second half, it just felt like I think Paul Cook kept bringing on substitutions. He kept bringing on defenders to try and show it up, and it just seemed to make it worse. It's amazing. That's the good thing about football, isn't it? Games like that, even when you're on the losing side of it, it's great.
You couldn't have had 2 different halves of football because, like I said, we got passed off the park in the first half. Owen Doyle, the other McSheffrey, other players, and it was like, this is tough. But then second half, we were absolutely brilliant. We obviously had to up our game, luckily got back in, and that's one I'll be honest, that's one of my favourite games in a Morecambe shirt.
Yeah. Well, it goes down in flames, those legendary games, even though we were on the wrong side of it. It's something that you remember.
Shea's ball, it's found its way through to Doyle. Great chance for the opening goal, and Doyle scores it. Almost self-destructing. Here's Dariqua. Right across goal for McSheffrey, it's 2-0. Here's Doyle, only for one challenge. Running into traffic, still going though, Doyle! Oh, how has he done that? Looking to hit back straight away. Nice pass into the path of Ellison. It's actually bounced off him and into the net. Quite got this clear. Now there's arms and legs everywhere, and it's been turned in. Mark Hughes is the man celebrating. This free kick is delivered in, and it's been touched in, and Morecambe's comeback is complete. Thanks to Jack Sampson. Chris searches out Ahmed, it's 4-3. Morecambe have turned this game on its head.
So which Chesterfield players are you still kind of in touch with then? You're still in touch with a load of them? Because you were there for a while, weren't you?
Just Downsy. Aaron Downsby, he's Downsy's my best mate. I speak to him once or twice a week still. So he's Colin Larkin occasionally, Alan O'Hare occasionally. That's more just sort of through socials.
Yeah.
But no, Downsy's the one, try and get to see him whenever I can. Obviously it's a bit harder now because he's one end of the country on the other. But we speak to each other still a couple of times a week.
At least you both get holidays at a seaside if you want them. Just
exactly. Yeah. No, I've been down to. He's living in Cheltenham, but I've been there when he was living in Turkey. I'd been down to spend a couple of days in consecutive summers with him down there, and it's really nice. Every time he's sort of played up north, he's come and stayed with me for a night. So yeah, we catch up when we can. Obviously, like I said, it's a bit more difficult nowadays, but we're always in contact.
Yeah, and finally, just talk about coaching. So it's obviously you're coaching now. How's it changed since you were playing? Because obviously it's interesting. I was talking to, I think it was Tommy Lee I was talking to actually about coaching. And he was saying that obviously there was a time when all keepers were 6'5", and then now goalkeepers are kind of getting shorter but quicker because it's all changed, hasn't it? How's it kind of changed in your time, kind of being?
Well, I think, like you said, back then it was one of the first questions someone would ask about the goalkeeper is how big is he? And he's 6 foot, right? No, we don't want him. Whereas the first question, and I think it's wrong that this question is the first one asked. It's certainly not the first one I'd ask. A lot of the times the first question is how good is he with his feet? But for me, yeah, you got to be good with your feet. But goalkeeper's job is to make saves, keep the ball out of the net. Personally, I like a big goalkeeper, a big strong goalkeeper. But it's definitely not a case of he's only 6'1", 6 foot 6'1". You don't rule those goalkeepers out. Whereas 15, 20 years ago, as Tommy said, they probably would have been ruled out a lot more than they should have been.
Yeah. So do you see this as your kind of career then now until you're retiring? You're going to be a goalkeeping coach?
Yeah. I don't see myself doing anything else, and obviously no idea what the future is going to hold. And it's sometimes it can be up in the air, with new managers coming in and stuff like that. But I love what I do. I feel very, very fortunate that I'm doing something that I love, and it's the next best thing to playing.
Yeah. Do you still get in between the sticks every now and then to show them how it's done?
Absolutely. I've done my time. No chance. No. That's the one thing I don't actually miss the training. I don't miss. I thought I'd really struggle when I came out and stopped playing. But so the last, sort of 3 or 4 months of when I was playing, I'd play on the Saturday, and then I wouldn't feel right till the Thursday. It'd take me quite a few days to get over it, and training began to get a lot less enjoyable because of the aches and pains. So I'll be honest, I do not miss it one little bit. I love what I'm doing, but don't miss the playing side.
Yeah, and I suppose you were really fortunate. I've spoken to loads of footballers who don't get to retire on their own terms, that it's either through injury or through not being able to find another club or something like that. You've played, how many games must you have played? 700-800 games?
Just over 600, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, it must be nice to have, got that whole way through a career and kind of been able to see it all that way through.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm extremely proud of my career, but I consider myself extremely lucky to have had the career I've had and to have played the amount of games I've played, because not an awful lot of people get to do that. If someone had said to me when I was starting out that you'll play till you're 37, I'd have snapped their hand off. Like I said, I consider myself very fortunate to have been able to do that.
Yeah, and you obviously got to have many times at Linda's Sandwich Shop and Saltergate and stuff like that.
Linda's Sandwich, definitely the highlight.
Last ditch stuff from Morecambe. Pompey battering down the hatches into it's Roach! He's headed the ball home! Barry Roach, the goal, has gone up to attack the set